For the majority of Smash Ultimate's competitive lifespan, the rule set has remained the same. Heck, for the majority of Smash Bros. As a series being played competitively, there have just been a few things that have stayed consistent throughout the series as a whole. But very recently, we've seen a few changes in the rules, specifically regarding Smash Ultimate's competitive rule set. But what brought about these changes? Who brought them about? And how did they come to be widely accepted in today's tournament landscape? Well, what if I told you that this critical change can be tracked down to one tournament? Not just that, but one set, one game, no, one decision that was the catalyst for this change, gripping the Smash community the way it did. And what if I told you that this decision was made before the game even started? This, dear viewers, is the story of Acola versus Myron at Smash Summit 5, the set that changed Smash forever. But before we get to this moment, we have to go over how we got here, and for that, we have to go back to the distant past of 2018. You know, 6 years ago, over half a decade. In previous Smash titles, the rule set has always dictated that the two players decide upon their stage and then decide their characters. There are a few variations, like stage bans and the fact that the winner of the previous game picks their character first, but for the sake of today's video, this isn't very important for now. The key piece of this puzzle is that it's stage first, then character. Why was this decided as Smash's standard for so long? Well, simply put, it's the order that the game went. Every Smash game presents you with the stage select screen before it presents you with the character select screen, so naturally that's just how tournaments decided to do it. And for the longest time, this worked. To analyze how, we'll be using Melee as a reference to Smash Ultimate. After all, Brawl and Smash 4 were kind of messes in their competitive heyday, with Brawl being dominated by Meta Knight and Smash 4 being dominated by DLC near the end of its life. Between the other two Smash games, 64 and Melee, Melee is the one with the larger competitive scene, so we'll be using it as a reference. Just know that a lot of what I'm about to say in regards to Melee transfers over to the other Smash titles fairly similarly. Since the dawn of time, people have been maining multiple characters in Smash, piloting more than just their main to great success. However, the way that this is done in Ultimate today is far different than it is in other games. In Melee, people usually counterpick for matchups. Take the set playing on screen right now, for example, Armada versus Hungrybox. Armada is a Peach main, but he went over to Fox for this set. Not because of the stage, and not because of the player, but because Fox has a far better matchup over Jigglypuff than Peach does. Now, not every player did this, mind you. Hungrybox, for instance, is a solo Jigglypuff through and through, and it was actually more common for players to be solo mains rather than try and play multiple characters, at least among the majority of players. In Melee's tippy-top echelon of players, we saw mostly one character with a counterpick here and there, mostly just to get a slight edge over another top competitor who otherwise they were on even footing with. Take Mango or Plup, swapping to Fox to deal with Hungrybox and using their main for everyone else. Same thing for Armada here. Even in today's top Melee scene, the three big names of Cody Schwab, Zayn, and Jmook are all mostly dedicated solo mains, with the only exception being Zayn's alter egos of Don't Test Me and Don't Test Us. Now, you could attribute this to Melee being over 2 decades old, and most problems in a game with a meta that developed lies in player counterplay and not character counterplay. However, it's just a simple truth that solo maining is far more commonplace in every Smash game other than Ultimate. Why is this? Well, because Ultimate has a massive roster. Everyone is here, as they say, and with a roster of over 80 characters, there are a lot of options to choose from. Not only that, Ultimate has a unique situation among the other Smash games. Nearly every character is good. Smash Ultimate is the most balanced Smash game in history, with nearly every single one of its 82 fighters being viable at a tournament level, and with over half of them being viable at a regional and major tournament level. Take this as opposed to the other Smash games. In nearly every other Smash title, you'd never have to worry about the entire cast. In Melee, there's 3 or 4 top tiers that you're guaranteed to see in nearly every bracket you enter. Everyone else is either uncommon, rare, or only exists in the low tier hero. That's a bit of an oversimplification, I know, especially nowadays where Melee's character roster is perhaps more diverse than it's ever been, but my general point still stands. In Melee, you really only have to know about 10 or so matchups in order to generally succeed at a high level. In Brawl, Smash 4, and Smash 64, the number could potentially be even lower. Smash 4 definitely had the most varied roster out of these three examples, but with the introduction of DLC, this kind of ruined everything. Brawl had 5 or so characters that you had to be able to beat, but other than that, the scene in its heyday wasn't very varied, despite how varied it is in the niche scene today. And Smash 64, optimistically, has 7 or so characters at max, but pessimistically, you only need to know how to beat 4 characters: Pikachu, Kirby, Yoshi, and Falcon. Again, for a lot of these games, I'm exaggerating just a little bit. In reality, at a major, you're likely to run into a low-tier hero or two, and if you're a top player, you probably do need to know every matchup in the game. But honestly, for a top player, that's not a huge ask. Even learning 20 or 30 matchups isn't that bad comparatively. Heck, top players in other fighting games like Street Fighter 6, Guilty Gear Strive, or Mortal Kombat 1 learn that many matchups every time they get a new installment with no issues. Now let's look over at Ultimate. How many matchups do you need to learn in Ultimate in order to succeed at a top, high, or even heck, regional level? All of them. All 82 matchups. I'm not kidding. Sure, some characters are bad low tiers, but if you run into a Little Mac player and have no idea what you're doing versus that character specifically, you're probably going to lose. Every character in this game is, relatively speaking, good. And with this, swapping to another character for a more favorable matchup became a really promising prospect in Ultimate. And it's not like this was unheard of either. Take Melee, where rare cases existed of players like Mewtwo King, who was known as the counterpicking god, swapping between Marth, Sheik, and Fox based on who he was fighting for the better matchup. Mewtwo King was one of Melee's 5 gods with that strategy, so this type of thing wasn't taboo by any means. But it had never been widespread, instead being rare, something seen for the big brains of the game like Mewtwo King to take advantage of because of how smart and talented they were. In Ultimate, it not only rose in prominence, but nearly became equal to solo maining in its commonality and chance of success. This was because of several factors. Yes, you do need to know all 82 matchups, and that made it tempting to swap to easier matchups instead of learning all 82 with one character. Yes, every character was good, requiring you to know how to fight even low tiers or risk being upset. But also important was the fact that none of the top tiers in this game were, well, broken. Yet. In Melee, you have Fox, and while Fox matchups are a somewhat controversial topic as of late, a lot of people would agree that he's the undisputed best in the game and doesn't really lose any matchups, generally speaking. Again, it's complicated and somewhat controversial, especially lately, but for the sake of argument, let's just say Fox doesn't lose any matchups. In Brawl, you had Meta Knight, who was the undisputed best and didn't lose any matchups. And in Smash 4, you had Bayo, who, you guessed it, was the undisputed best and didn't lose any matchups. The only Smash game to not have a character like this is Smash 64, where the game's 4 or 3 best characters all beat each other, like a game of rock, paper, scissors, but don't lose to anybody else except each other. Ultimate doesn't have this. Even in the game's early days, the top tiers consisted of characters like Pikachu, Joker, and Wolf. Pikachu loses hard to Mr. Game & Watch and maybe Ness too. Joker loses hard to Pikachu, Sonic, Pichu, and maybe even Mega Man and Inkling. Wolf loses hard to Rob and maybe Mario, it depends on who you ask. Even today, with a complicated but mostly solved meta, there is maybe one character in the entire game who could claim to lose no matchups. Sonic. And even then, that's a controversial topic, with a lot of Fox and Pikachu mains still claiming that they beat Sonic, and with Sonic's most recent matchup chart having those two characters in a tier named Hard to Win, although this wasn't a standard matchup chart, to be fair. The simple truth is that, for Ultimate, there is no one-size-fits-all character like there was in previous Smash games. No matter who you play in the entire game, you will struggle with at least one matchup. This made picking up secondaries even more tempting. I mean, think about it. If you main Sonic and win nearly every matchup except for Fox and Pikachu, why wouldn't you pick up Mr. Game & Watch, who beats both of those characters +2 and who is considered an extremely simple and easy character? And so, with Ultimate, while we didn't see the death of solo maining per se, we definitely saw it fall to a secondary, more uncommon playstyle in contrast to previous Smash titles. I mean, look at the top 10 of even the first ever PGRU, where people still had the mentalities of old Smash games. The only solo main in the entire top 10 of the game was Light, who was number 10. And yes, while spots 11 through 20 had more solo mains, taking a look at big sections of this list, you can clearly see that solo maining took a backseat in Ultimate. Compare this to Melee's top 20. Just look at it. It's night and day. I don't even need to explain it to you. But Rister, you may be asking, why are we talking about any of this? I thought this was a video about Acola versus Myron at Smash Summit 5. You've been talking about Melee and matchups and character rosters for so long now. Is there an actual point to any of this? Well, yes, there is. Because we've just gone over the extensive history of solo maining versus not solo maining for all of Smash's competitive lifespan, up until one very important milestone. The release of what many people consider to be the worst thing to ever happen to Smash Ultimate, the release of Fighters Pass 2. We've been talking a lot so far, and we'll talk a lot more later on, but there is one key distinction that I need to bring up before we go any further. Everything that I've mentioned so far has been about counterpicking based on matchups. Sure, other factors like opponents and stages played a part, but was never the main factor. It was always about the on-paper matchups first and foremost. But with the release of Fighters Pass 2, we were about to see a massive shift in how people thought about counterpicking and secondaries. That's because, for the first time in competitive Smash Ultimate history, counterpicking became no longer about the matchup. Instead, it became a question of the stage.
Kazuya!
When Fighters Pass 2 was released, we saw the introduction of two characters that are very important for the latter half of today's video, Min Min and Kazuya Mishima. Now, this video is mostly going to center around Kazuya as it's the relevant character for the set in question. Just know that pretty much everything I say about Kazuya in this video also applies to Min Min as well, just to a slightly lesser degree. So Kazuya, and again Min Min as well, is a very volatile character. When he wins, but his weaknesses are so huge, his flaws so glaring, that he can be a very volatile bracket character. Kazuya relies on stage and matchup more so than maybe any other top tier in the entire game, and he's one of the biggest matchup checks in the game itself. Now, a character favoring certain stages is nothing new for Smash Ultimate, and indeed Smash itself. Mario, for example, likes stages with lots of platforms like Battlefield, as they're helpful with his combo game and ladders. Roy likes Town and City, because these short side blast zones allow moves like F-tilt and side B to kill at ludicrous percents. Most zoners like big stages, most rushdown characters like small stages, etc, etc. This is just a part of the game, but it's never been a problem before. If you're fighting a Roy, just ban Town, for example. But with Kazuya, this character is so volatile that when he's on Final Destination, he's nigh unbeatable. While this can, and has, been exaggerated just a little bit, everyone knows that Kazuya is perhaps the best FD character in the entire game, and it's quite ridiculous how good he can be on that stage. But this shouldn't be a problem either, right? Just ban FD. Well, you would be right if not for what we spent the entire first half of this video talking about. The rise of co-maining, secondaries, and pocket characters. People were playing multiple characters and having them in their pocket, and since Ultimate is stage first and then character second, players would use these pockets as a surprise matchup check against their opponent. But with Kazuya, we saw the introduction of something truly sinister. This same concept, but instead of matchup checking, it was being used to better fit the stage. Kazuya is not an easy character by any means. His inputs can be hard if you've never played a traditional fighting game, and his combos can have a tight execution. But Kazuya is a character you can learn in a training room all by yourself, and not actually having any in-tournament practice. This made it extremely easy for players to have a secret pocket Kazuya that no one knew about, and one of the players who did this was Acola. Now, don't get me wrong, people knew about Acola's Kazuya. However, Acola competed in Japan, and not many NA competitors or viewers knew where to find Acola's VODs other than grand final sets where Acola was using Steve. Acola was also a Steve main through and through. Heck, Acola is perhaps the poster boy for Steve. Why would anyone assume that the Steve prodigy himself had a secondary? And all of these factors started to combine. The rise of secondaries in Ultimate, the release of Kazuya Mishima and his volatility, the stage first selection, and many players having a secret Kazuya, and it all came to a head. This brings us back to where we started. Smash Summit 5. Acola versus Myron. This was extremely early in the tournament and was one of the first sets for both players. Game 1 and 2 both saw Acola utilizing his Steve against Myron's Olimar, and Myron is pretty much a solo man. And while Myron would take the lead in both games, Acola would take them both with 2 clean reads. This meant that we were headed into a Game 3 with Acola being up 2-0. But hey, not to worry, Myron has been keeping up with Acola so far, even taking the lead. In between the 2 games, Myron goes to Final Destination in an attempt to disrupt Acola mining for materials, and as FD is a pretty good stage for Olimar. As long as Myron can make 1 or 2 adjustments, there's a great chance he'll be able to bring this set back in a reverse 3-0 and create one of the biggest upsets of the entire tournament. Wait, did you see that? Pause. Why did Myron put his face in his hand there? What happened? Let's turn the audio on the VOD on and rewind a little bit, and maybe we can see what's got Myron so upset.
Foot still there, foot still there.
Yeah.
Forward smash.
You know, I can't, like, he can't kind of sub out just yet, because I feel like both those games were like last stock, last hit.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that Myron could definitely still, like, you know, pull his own, like, you know, to be able to pull a reverse 3 stock. That being said, we're going to find that out right now. I don't know what stage we're at right now.
Because both Myron and Acola have something.
Oh,
Kazuya
no.
Mishima, baby!
He done counterpicked
Oh,
himself.
let's go!
Oh, that's not Steve. That's Kazuya Mishima. To be honest with you all, this game actually ended up being pretty close. It went last stock and debatably last hit, but Acola closed out the set with a 3-0, defeating Myron, who would go on to finish last at the event, with this set being one of many tragic pulls at this tournament. But what no one, not the players nor the commentators, could know was that this set was the catalyst, the true start of a movement within the Smash community, a movement for change. This set made people realize just how easily exploitable this entire system was. The fact that anyone could swap over to a secret pocket on an extremely volatile stage with an extremely volatile character and just, as many people saw it, pull out free wins seemed extremely unfair to a large part of the community. And so people looked to see how they could change this. Obviously, it would be impossible to force people to play one character. You could ban these volatile characters, but given the fact that the community can't even agree on banning Steve, banning Kazuya and Min was very unlikely. That left the community with just one option: change the rules. Change the history of the entire Smash scene. Swap from stage first to character first. Now, don't get me wrong, the argument to swap to a character-first rule set existed before Smash Summit 5, but back then it was a far more nuanced question. The main question regarding this rule set was, do you want to reward people who solo mained or people who don't? You could have made the argument for either side, but honestly, it doesn't matter for the sake of this video. The argument went back and forth with no real productive answer, ensuring that a character-first rule set never really gained traction. Until, however, this set of Acola versus Myron happened. This was the biggest tournament going on at the time, and everyone was watching it. Never before had the folly of stage first rule sets ever been more clear. Seemingly overnight, the issue of stage first versus character first went from a niche, nuanced debate to a massive movement. The players certainly hadn't seen this coming. Acola went on to place top 8 at the event, so he had bigger worries than one of his first sets. And as for Myron, he's on record as saying that he simply forgot that Acola had a Kazuya. It wasn't Myron who started the movement for character first. Rather, it was the outrage that fans had over Myron's loss that sparked the debate, perhaps motivated by the fact that Myron had been voted into this summit, and so a lot of people who had voted him in were very invested in seeing him do well, and this loss pushed them over the edge and over to the side of character first. Now, if Myron had been fighting Acola's Steve, would he have won the set? Honestly, probably not. But that wasn't the point. Myron was correct in pointing out that even though Acola won the previous game, Acola had the advantage going into Game 3 because of this pocket Kazuya. And this set made many people realize that it was insane that the player who was supposed to have the ban advantage could end up being reverse counterpicked into the disadvantage because of this extremely polarizing character and stage. And so, the character-first movement exploded, with tweets like this one here gaining huge traction in the community. And just like that, Smash Ultimate was changed forever. Fast forward to today. Acola is, debatably, but also kind of safely, the best player in the world for 2023. At the very least, he was ranked number 1 on the mid-year ranking and probably will be ranked the same for the end-of-year rank. Out of these 10 players, by the way, 7 of them don't solo main, with only Sonics, Light, and Yoshidora being solo mains. Solo maining is the minority in today's competitive scene, now perhaps more so than ever. As for Myron, well, he's effectively retired from Smash Ultimate. His last major was the Ludwig Smash Invitational, and his only large-ish tournament after that was Cirque du CFL 1. After that, Myron basically only attended locals, and his last few were in September of last year. It's very obvious that Myron is just done with competing in this game at that top level like he used to, and Smash Summit 5 really was his last tournament as a top player. And while I can't really confirm if this is 100% true, I've heard accounts from people who talked to Myron at pre-Summit tourneys like Rise and Grind that Myron was planning on making it into Summit and then having that as his last hurrah, quitting competitive Smash at that top level afterwards. And mind you, I say none of this as a dig towards Myron. It's very clear that he's happy with his decisions, and for what it's worth, it's very obvious that Myron is dearly missed by a good majority of Smash's spectators, and is certainly missed by me. But this catalyst, started by 2 players who never could have seen it coming, saw a revolution in Smash. In America anyways, pretty much every tournament is ran with character first and then stage, with the winner of the previous match having to declare whether or not they're going to stay their character before the loser picks their character before both of them proceed with banning stages like usual. My 2 cents is that I think this change is actually a good one for Smash. As much as I like counterpicking and secondaries, I think they should stay as a tool for on-paper matchups, not as a surprise matchup check on their best stage that you unknowingly picked. I think the lack of this surprise matchup check makes the game more competitive and removes a really big way for players to cheese wins against others. And honestly, I think this change will persist in future Smash titles. While it likely won't be necessary for older titles like Melee, when Smash 6 comes out, I think the character first rule set will stay. Partly because the game will 100% have DLC, and it 100% will kill the game, just like DLC did to Smash 4 and Ultimate. But also because Smash 6 has the chance to be Smash Ultimate 2, and therefore have some of the same volatile characters. And this critical change in the rule set, and the fundamental way that Smash Bros is played as an esport, can all be tracked back to this one set, this one game, this one decision at Smash Summit 5. That's going to be it for today's pretty different video. If you haven't been able to tell, I've been trying to make videos that can be enjoyed forever. A lot of my tournament recaps are really only relevant that week when the tournament is fresh. But this video, my Toady Goody video, and a few others that I've made in the past are meant to be enjoyed at any time and are meant to be more like a documentary rather than a news report. Let me know if you enjoy this style of content. Before I go, shoutout goes to my patrons Seth Laster, Frosco333, and my 2 patrons Iltis and Diamond Blaze. Additionally, shout out my YouTube members Stormtrooper, Loco Soco, Diarrhea, Dicho Jr., Defective, Orangabang, Fan of, and my 2 members Mike G and Wu-Tang Forever. Additionally, shoutout goes to my tier 3 patron Ocean Man, who says Mr. Mice is sorry for playing Min Min. If you want to support me using any of these methods, links are in the description below. Tomorrow, I'll be releasing a pre-tournament analysis of Umebura SP10, but until then, I've been Mr. Mice, and thank you all so very much for watching.